أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد صلى على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى يوم الدين. The blessed soul of Marhum Ihsanullah Taimuri, let's recite a Surah Al-Fatiha after a Salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So this night's majlis will be for the blessed soul of Marhum Taimuri and remembering three infallibles. So all of our lectures and majalis that we have, we make it for the intention of Rasulullah, the best of creation, for Imam Hassan alayhi salam, the first son of Imam Ali and Lady Fatima, and also Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salam, whose martyrdom is known to be the last night or the last day of the month of Safar, which should be tomorrow. Which should be, yes, I believe it will be tonight or tomorrow. When we talk about learning from Rasulullah and understanding who the Messenger of Allah is, we can read many different books. We can listen to different lectures. But I'd like to continue examining the life of the final messenger of Allah. The best way to understand who the best of creation is and the sealed messengers is to recite and read the Quran. Because the Holy Quran mentions how Rasulullah was. The hadith has that nobody knows him except for Allah and Imam Ali alayhi salam. So if you want to know Rasulullah, turn towards the Quran. Tonight we'll be talking about 5 qualities of the Messenger of God in the Holy Quran. And we'll be inshallah learning and implementing these in our lives. If you want to remember, this is Surah in the last, in 128th verse of chapter 9. Quran says, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. There has certainly come to you a messenger from among yourselves. Grievous to him is what you suffer. He is concerned over you, and to the believers is kind and merciful. So I think that this is one of the very complete verses about Rasulullah. The first quality that you see that Allah mentions and describes His messenger is that he is لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ, that he is a messenger for you. What does a messenger do? Brings a message. Many people get confused as to why we need a messenger. Right now we live in a time period where man is very rapidly, his life and our way of life is changing. Every year there is a new development. There is an advancement. And maybe this question arises in our minds. Do we even need a Rasul? Do we even need a messenger? The way we are headed, we're going very fast, and as you saw this last few months and this last year, a focus has been given on AI, artificial intelligence. And mankind now, maybe we'll see that some person will say, look, especially here in Silicon Valley, that these things and these discussions were for 1400 years ago. We don't need them now. They don't apply to us now. We need technology now. So the first quality that you see in this verse about the messenger of God is that he's a Rasul. A Rasul is needed for what? If I were to ask you, why do you need a prophet? Why do you need a messenger? What would you answer? One of the answers that our mutakallimin and theologians give is that mankind, after you prove the existence of God, mankind needs to know the path towards God. The path towards Him needs to be clear, because mankind moves by his intellect. God cannot create us, a wise God cannot create us and not tell us what to do. It's like, for example, having guests over at my house, inviting all of you to come to my house. And for example, I'm a cheap person and I don't give you my address. All of you are invited, come to my house, but I don't give you an address. So mankind needs to know to reach God after he proves God's existence. And he needs to know this with knowledge. He needs this message, this path needs to be clear for him. Now we examine, I'm going to say very shortly and we'll go to the next. Now we examine the tools at our disposal. And we see, are these tools at our disposal, our conventional tools that we have, are they sufficient for man to know the path towards God? The first tool is the intellect. The intellect is a great tool. The intellect can prove God's existence. But it also has insufficiencies. One of the insufficiencies of the intellect is about that detail, the exact things, for example, that this path does it take for us, the exact effects of our actions. The intellect will not know. For example, we might know the effects of our actions in this world. But how do we know the effects of these actions in the hereafter, after we prove the hereafter in Allah? So the intellect is a great tool that we have at our disposal, but is still not enough. If it was enough, all the philosophers would have came to one common opinion that this is the way that you should live your lives. But we see over and over there's disputes among philosophers, lawmakers. We see how many laws and legislative laws are changed every year, for example, in different countries. And we see there's no unanimous decision that this is the code of law for mankind. So we come to the conclusion that the intellect is a very powerful tool, but yet it cannot discover details of exactly how this path should be. Let me make it more clear for you. Intellect says, for example, generally, worship of Allah is good. God exists, His worship is needed. Does the intellect design for us a way to exactly worship Him? Which method, for example? How many units should the prayer be? What, for example, conditions should prayer have? What makes the prayer void? These things we'll need another tool that we'll talk about. So therefore, we don't know exactly which path, because we said that the path needs to be made clear, the details of that path, that exact act of worship, what is going to cause God's satisfaction, what's going to cause Him to become upset with us. In general, we know dhulm is bad, good. In general, we know, for example, doing good to others is good. But if I ask you, and philosophers, they have questions about this. Is lying always bad? Is lying sometimes allowed? Philosophers have questions about this. We don't know. Some philosophers say no. Lying is unconditionally bad. But then when we dive into it and look at instances, we see that actually, wait a minute, the mind cannot understand this. That there are certain conditions in places where deen and religion says you should actually lie. For example, a crazy person comes into the masjid right now and comes after me. I run away first because I'm the speaker, I need to be protected. I run away first. And they come after you and say, where did the speaker go? And you are wondering, which school of thought and philosophy do I have? Should I say the truth or not? And he says, where did he go? I went this way. Deen will say, will say it's haram for you to tell that, Syed went this way. It's haram. Here you have to lie. These are cases where lying is actually wajib for you to protect, because there's a hierarchy, there's something else that gives more importance to, and that is the protection of life. So there were some philosophers that were confused, and they said that there is no way that lying can ever be allowed. So when we dive into this, and those that have studied philosophy and have studied especially Western philosophy, they see that it is just, there's no unanimous opinion about the actions, ethical actions of humans. So therefore the path is not clear. So the first tool, and which is one of our greatest tools, is the aql and intellect. It needs a supplement. It needs something else. The other tool we have is sense perception. You know that I exist right now because you see me. You hear me, for example. You have 5 senses. Maybe you could smell me. I don't know how sharp your nose is. I don't know. But you know that I exist because of your 5 senses. But are the 5 senses completely allowing me to know the path towards God? No. Actually, some of our philosophers say that the 5 senses, or learning things from sense perception, is the lowest form of knowledge, because it's shared by the animal view. Animals sometimes, if they don't see something, if you look at a mirror, for example, they get confused and they think it's someone else. So we look at the second tool that we have, which is the 5 senses. And that is how we know things, and it is a great tool that we have. But again, here it has insufficiencies. So we come to the conclusion that after the intellect, which is a great tool, we live our lives, cannot answer the most important questions of exactly how I should live my life and what is the path to God. And this path needs for me to be clear, so that on the day of judgment, God, I cannot ask Him, you never made the path clear to me. We learn that intellect is insufficient, and we learn that the 5 senses or sensory perception is not sufficient. So what comes to our mind is there must be another tool, another instrument that is used for mankind to be able to understand what his sa'adat or happiness or prosperity relies in. And what is that tool? Wahi, revelation. That is what revelation is. Revelation is showing you the path towards God's ridwan, His satisfaction. And He brings Rasul, and He brings prophets for us, for them to teach us, for them to show us the path, so that our ultimate purpose of creation can be fulfilled. And unless the prophets come, mankind will always be lost. And we see today, as nations have, some of them left religion, they have not made things very clear with their intellect. There's actually complicated things. And I think the best example is today, with all the confusion you see that is happening about, different genders, for example, different marriages, are they allowed or not? The intellect gets confused. So the path has to be brought by the prophets. The path to God's satisfaction has to be brought by prophets, and this is called revelation. And as long as we believe in God, when you prove God, and as long as you believe in the hereafter, your logic says, well, the path to God needs another tool by revelation. That is why when we come to this holy instrument, many times we just submit to it when it comes to our law, when it comes to the philosophies of law. Some law come to us and we don't understand. Does that mean that you don't act to it because you don't understand? Or you say, well, I have sense perception, I have intellect, and the completion is revelation. And if I was supposed to understand everything, then there was no need for revelation. So therefore, there might be things that might be challenging for me to understand now. But I know at the end it has an explanation, but that explanation hasn't come to me yet, because mankind has not reached that level, or it has been clear to us yet. But we say, inshallah, when Imam Mahdi ajallahu ta'ala farajah comes back, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala, and our uqul and intellect is complete, He will teach us that every action has mafsada, that is haram, and every action has maslaha, has a goodness in it. But if we were allowed to understand it all completely, then there would be no need for revelation. So therefore, this, when it says a Rasul has come to you, meaning that you need revelation. And from the beginning that man was created, the path towards God has been made clear by these 124,000 prophets that he has sent. So the first attribute of Rasulullah is that he's a messenger, and he's bringing a message, a divine message, which is the path to God. The second characteristic of Rasulullah in Quran is, even though he's bringing something that we do not have direct information of, he is bringing it. But it says, min anfusikum, that he is from you. Actually, this is very interesting, that at the same time that we understand that Rasulullah is different than us, he has revelation, we don't have revelation, but at the same time he's very close to us, because he's a human. And he lives life like us. He has children like us. He gets married like us. And he can relate to his stories, we can relate to his seerah and his life, because he lived just like us. So the second part is that ability to connect to the prophets. Some people ask this important question: why tawassul? Why beseech Rasulullah? Why use them as a mediator between us and Allah? Why use Imam Ali? Why use the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam as a mediator? One of the answers for this is that because God's existence is complete necessity, he is wajibul wujud. And for you to understand God is a completely different, because we're contingent existence, we're mumkin, we're in need. And God is nothing but needlessness and unlimitedness. So we cannot relate in when it comes to, for example, God living, for example, a human life, having suffering the problems we suffer, because he has no need. So it's that issue of relating and being able to connect to God in that realm, that he lived a life like us because he has no need. So God sends messengers, God sends successors, and that because of them you can relate to them. They live life like you connect to them easier because he is of the same, you can say, genus of you. So therefore you can attach to them easier. Have you seen children? When a child doesn't eat, for example, this child doesn't eat. Put their peers with them, have them eat in front of them, the child will start eating. They follow. We follow people or beings that are very much like us. So this second part is min anfusikum. He is from you, he has blood and flesh like us. There's life and death like us. He needs to eat, for example, like us. He's hungry like us. He is not an angel. He is not a creation that is completely not relatable to us. And that is one of the beauties of tawassul, is a strengthening of our relationship through God, through these perfect individuals that Allah wants us to call. But in reality is nothing but tawheed, because Allah wants us, or in the Quran or in Hadith, says call these names. Call these names and you will strengthen our connection. Because we don't have much time, we'll try to go through these fast. So therefore, when Rasulullah has revelation, which is separate from us, but he's from us, that causes him to be a behavioral paradigm for us. That whatever he does becomes for us an example to follow. Very much all you do is you read the life of Rasulullah, you look at the sayings, and you copy what he did. Very simple. Very simply to understand, but hard to implement. The last thing, or the third thing, about the qualities of Rasulullah is this, that Azizun alayhi ma anittum. Grievous to him is what you suffer. Our messenger is so caring that, what quality do you think this is, that he cares for you a lot? In our lives, who cares for you the most? Right? Who do you think, from more than your friends, more than any type of family member, who usually cares for you the most, is always worried for you? Who? Parents, the father, the mother. When you look at this hadith, that the hadith says that the Prophet and Imam Ali alayhi salam are fathers for us. Ana wa Ali abawa hadhihi al-ummah. We are fathers of this ummah. You understand that whatever is happening to me, just like my own father cares for me and wants me to succeed, we also have a spiritual father who is Rasulullah. And he cares for me, and he suffers when I suffer. and He is watching over me. Both Shia and Sunni hadith have this, that our actions, our a'mal, are presented to Rasulullah. Both Shia and Sunni have these hadith, that either weekly or daily, but regardless, whatever happens throughout our lives is presented to Rasulullah. And him being rahmatun lil alameen, that him being the rahmah and mercy of mankind, he, in the same way, when affliction happens to us, he is also sad. Today we are mourning the death of this dear child. We understand that at the same time, if we truly were to open our eyes, that this saying also means that Rasulullah is aware. And he is also sad for you when you're sad, for example. And that when you are in a happy occasion, he is happy for you. There is this connection that we have because he is the father figure for us. And we have to realize and implement this in our lives when we live our life, is that Rasulullah is in charge. And you look at some of the du'as. Ilahi an adkhaltani an-nar fa fi dhalika surur aduwik wa in adkhaltani al-jannah fa fi dhalika surur nabiyyik. Allah, if you give me heaven, this will be actually surur of your Prophet. The Prophet will be very happy if you give me heaven. That he cares so much for us, that when we enter heaven, when we are successful, the dua says he has surur, he has happiness, he becomes happy. Harisun alaykum, we'll go with the next quality. He is very eager. He is haris. I don't know if you've ever seen this quality of haris. Some people have hirs. Some people have hirs when it comes to wealth and money. Not that necessarily having income is something bad, it's something good. We should be very financially capable. We should be financially powerful people. But some people have hirs, and it causes greed. It causes their entire lives to be, searching for money, just searching. And then when they have it, they are so greedy, they don't want to spend it in the right way. But there are those individuals that are haris and greedy, you can say, or eager for you. Harisun alaykum. He is haris over your guidance. One of the verses in Quran that every time I read it, it causes sometimes for me to be amazed at how much our messenger wanted the people to become guided. Is the verse in the Quran, فَلَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ عَلَى آثَارِهِمْ إِن لَمْ يُؤْمِنُوا بِهَذَا الْحَدِيثِ أَسَفًا. It's as if Rasulullah, the Quran says, you will kill yourself through grief over them if they do not believe in this message. It's close that Rasulullah will kill himself. It says, فَلَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ عَلَى آثَارِهِمْ إِن لَمْ يُؤْمِنُوا بِهَذَا الْحَدِيثِ أَسَفًا. That for him, guidance is so important. And that if we are, God forbid, misguided, that it is close that the messenger will kill himself. A person came to Rasulullah in the books of history, a nomad. He came, and a lot of times there's misinformation. And he came to the Prophet and he began to speak to him in a very rude manner, in a way that the companions and the followers of the Prophet were very offended. And many times when this happens, people want to teach that person a lesson, want to protect the Prophet's honor because they're not going to deal with that anymore. That was in Mecca when he didn't have those followers. But now he's in Medina and he is a statesman. He has power, he has an army. So we're not going to allow that to happen. Rasulullah comes to him, and I'm trying to show you how he's haris, and he was in a way very eager to guide people. In the way that it's mentioned, he offers this person compassion. A person offers, we said, one of the narrations we mentioned last night was on the sheath of the sword of Rasulullah, mentioned that, provide for a person that prohibits or doesn't give to you, provide for them. So he asks him, basically offers him food. And he offers them kindness. And he offers them, he possibly say a place to stay. Anyways, other types of kindness. This person, then he asks him, to sit down, come and sit down. With a smile, he looks at him with compassion and affection. Says, Ya akha Bani Salim, oh brother from Bani Salim, for example, my brother, addresses him with kind words. And he was, he says, come with me so I can give you what you want. At that time, the Bedouin says, may God reward you and protect you for your family. He shows them so much, and usually people are smart. They understand when you go to a great person, a holy person, and whatever you have, your threats, your words, you spill it all out. You actually see that is a time when a person shows themselves. And to say nothing, that's something. That's, But then to actually be kind to them is something else. And to actually provide for them food, for example. So the same person, he comes and says, may God protect you for your family. And then the Prophet asks him, well, why don't you say this in front of my companions? Because they were offended. So then he says the same thing. And then he becomes Muslim. Because the Prophet is haris alaykum. He is very eager to guide people, even that person that is threatening him. And he gives the example of a wild camel. A camel that is afraid. And the owner is trying to take control of this camel. But people are rushing to help the owner out, but they are still frightening that camel even more. And the owner tells him, for example, go away, I know what this camel needs. And he gives the camel, for example, some hay, some food. He says, in a way, I am the same way that I know what this person wants. They need kindness. They need someone to become their friend. They need someone to give them, offer them, patience. And this is a great lesson for us, that many times we think that we can spread Islam through yelling and shouting and putting pressure on children, even though we should be organized. I have a speech that talks about how the Prophet was very firm at the same time. But there's a time to be firm, organized, and there's a time to be very compassionate and forgiving and patient. That your children, when they look at you as very forgiving parents, very kind parents, they'll be much easier attracted to you as if they just view you as an authority that they can always just get in trouble with. So we see this behavioral paradigm of Rasulullah, of taming someone that was a threat to him by compassion and being their friend. And this person becomes Muslim, and we see that many people of his tribe also become Muslim. Let's recite Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The last quality that this verse says is that Rasulullah was bil mu'mineen ra'ufun rahim. That he is kind and merciful. Actually, this attribute and this word is used in the Quran for Allah. We use it for Allah in the same way. Inna rabbakum la ra'ufun rahim. God is compassionate, God is kind. I think that one of the attributes of Rasulullah that we take for granted many times, we don't really understand his compassion. And we don't understand how much ability and power that he has. A person comes to Imam Ali alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajafaj. And Imam Ali alayhi salam in his khutbah talks about one of the most compassionate and merciful verses of the Quran. If I were to ask you right now, you've read the Quran, what is the most compassionate verse in the Quran? Which verse would you say? Which verse is the most compassionate? So, this is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Very good. Actually, that's one of the closest words to the Ismul A'zam, the great name of Allah is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So Imam Ali alayhi salam mentions that you think, people of Arab, his khutbah, I believe, he says that you think that this verse is the most merciful verse. And he says a verse that many of the speakers use in the night of Qadr, night of destiny, to cause people to ask for forgiveness. Maybe you've heard this verse, very popular. قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. Oh my servants, very interesting, says Ya ibadi, It's talking about the sinners. But Allah is addressing them as my servants. Ya ibadi, alladhina asrafu, those that have transgressed on themselves. Not for me, they haven't done anything against me. I'm Allah. All the sin they do is against themselves. And Allah just wants to make sure they don't sin against themselves. They don't harm themselves. La taqnatu min rahmatillah. God will forgive all sins. Never have despair. Beautiful verse. That God will forgive. Inna Allah yaghfiru dhunuba jami'a. God forgives all sins, everything. Everything there's a way. There's no sin that you could say it's too late, too difficult, for example, for you to turn back. Beautiful verse. I read it right now. Do most people agree that this is maybe the most merciful verse in the Quran? But then Imam Ali salam says, no, it's not. This verse isn't. It's actually something more merciful than this. And in the hadith it has this, that then he brings to them the very famous verse, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. And soon, and your Lord is going to give you, and you will be satisfied. He's going to give you, messenger, is going to give you what? Shia and Sunni will all say. The hadith is ash-shafa'a, ash-shafa'a, ash-shafa'a. Intercession, intercession, intercession. That Rasulullah, I will give you so much intercession. That all these people that are destined for hell, they're going to the hellfire. That you will free so many of them. And then it says, no, وَيُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. Until you, Rasulullah, are satisfied. That you will be satisfied, that's enough. I have caused so much intercession. Imam Ali says this is the most hopeful verse in the Quran, which is the verse about the shafa'at of Rasulullah. Again, let's do salawat ala Muhammad. Talking about how we don't understand His mercy. There's a tradition that talks about the rahmah of God. And it says that if you were to measure mercy in this world, and I want you to calculate, those that are good at math, imagine all the different creatures we have on earth, and how many times all of them were nice or kind to one another, showed mercy to one another. Every time, for example, an animal showed, for example, compassion to its child. It's compassion. Anytime a human was nice to another human. What number could you put for that? Almost infinity, right? That how much kindness there was on planet Earth. It's a huge number. It's a number you cannot count. The narration says this, that mercy that exists on earth, first of all, this is nothing but Allah's mercy. Because everything that is kamal or perfection comes from Allah. You know, there's a story that the hadith that Musa alayhi salam saw a mother, and she was carrying this child with difficulty in a dangerous passage or dangerous place, and was wondering what would happen if the mercy of Allah wasn't for this mother, for example. And then to test, the mercy of Allah gets disconnected from the mother and the child, and the mother just puts the child on the ground and goes. That this is from the mercy of Allah that is instilled to this mother, to the child. It's reaching the child, but it's through medium. So all of this, put one number, zillion or whatever, I don't know if that's a real word, but the largest number that you know, that is all the mercy that happened on planet Earth. That's one thing. The hadith has this, that all of that is one part of the 100 parts of God's mercy. That 99 other parts of God's mercy is in the hereafter. We're always afraid, Yawm ad-Din is true, we should be afraid for what we do to ourselves. But we forget that the hereafter is the place for God's mercy. 99 parts of His mercy are in the hereafter. One part is in this world. That is why shaitan comes, and the narration says he is actually tempted to ask for forgiveness. It says everyone says, that guy was forgiven, that guy, these guys are horrible. What about me? And then the hadith has that all of this mercy These 99 parts that we said, if you want to measure it, one part is on planet Earth. 99 parts of Allah's mercy is channeled and comes through Rasulullah on the Day of Judgment. Let's give a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala. So that is the mercy, how we say we have misunderstood the Prophet. The Prophet, Allah has put His own mercy, that 99 parts, in Rasulullah, and as Quran says, He will give so much until He is satisfied. Dear brothers and sisters, we come with a calamity that happened to our community with the passing away, and tonight is the, in a way, Fatiha or Majlis for this young, innocent child. Many people sometimes are confused, and we had different occurrences in Southern California when a young person passes away. Sometimes the young people or family members or parents, they get confused and they don't know, why is this happening? What's going on? Why such a test? Part of the rahmat of Rasulullah that I'm going to explain, I want to also explain something else. That there are three qualities of God, three attributes of God that I want you tonight to learn from me. That if you believe in this, it will help you through many of the calamities of life. One is that Allah is ala kulli shay'in qadir. God has power and dominion over everything. When He wants something, He says, kun fayakun. Am I exaggerating about this or not? That God has ultimate authority and power. When you look at space and how He had made such a vast universe, that you see that the closest star to us besides the sun is for example, light years away. How fast does light travel? It takes 4 years. It takes, for example, a few minutes, 8 minutes for the sun light to reach us, but the closest star after that, it takes 4 years. And the farthest, something like 25 billion light years away, is the farthest star that we have found. 25 billion. You know that a star lives maybe 10 billion years. Or 10, if I remember, maybe million or billion, I'm mixing it. But anyways, half the life, 2 times the life of a star. By the time that light comes to us, that star doesn't even exist there anymore. Probably exploded. That is the vastness. And then you look at the intricate parts of our cardiovascular system, our immune system. You look at the details of our skeletal system. You see that He is a very powerful Lord. You see, too, He's a very wise Lord. The second attribute I want you to remember that will help you with calamities and remembering the mercy of Allah. He's a very wise Lord. Do I know better or does Allah know? Do I know what will happen to me tomorrow? Do I even know what will happen to me in 1 minute? If you just knew 1 minute in front of you, you would be the richest person in the world. You invest in this stock and sell that stock in 1 minute. Nobody knows what's going to happen in 1 minute. So Allah is Hakim. God is wise. And the last attribute of God, God is a Rahim. He has a Rahmah upon everyone. When He's very capable, He's very wise. He doesn't do anything for no purpose. And at the same time, He is merciful more than your parents. He loves you more than your parents love you. Then why isn't that enough for us to do tawakkul and to say that these calamities that happen, Allah knows best. And we say, Inna lillah. We belong to Allah. Even this, for example, this iPad, whatever, this clothes I have, it does not belong to me. If I say it belongs really to me, in reality, that's shirk and polytheism. Everything that exists is from God. So therefore, these three qualities, God's dominion power, God's mercy, and God's wisdom, allows me to understand that God is sufficient for me. And that when He brings something for me, He is actually doing tarbiyat of me. He is actually having mercy on everyone. But I don't understand because I only think that it's only this world that exists. It's not, there's no other world, for example. When I understand there's another world and everything else will be made up for in the next world, then I start to have more patience. And I say that, Allah, you know best. I don't even know 1 minute in front of me. Things are very confusing. But all I know is you're powerful, you're wise, and you're compassionate. That's enough for me to trust you. And I trust you with this very unfortunate calamity that happened to me. But I know that you know the best, because I don't know what will happen in front of me. And I don't know that you want kamal and perfection from me. Hopefully that this causes us, this last part, that Rasulullah has, is his rahmah, his mercy, causes us to understand that Allah is his compassionate, his mercy is from 100 parts, 99 is in the hereafter. We're going to dim the lights and now get into the musibah that exists for Imam Hassan alayhi salam. We ask Allah to give mercy and patience to the family of Taymuri, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farajahum. Allahumma kulla waliyika al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan salawatuka alayhi wa ala aba'i fi hadhihi as-sa'a wa fi kulli sa'a waliyan wa hafidan wa qa'idan wa nasiran دليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. We mentioned the musibah of Rasulullah. We're going to talk about the calamity of one of our most madloom imams. An imam that when 20 million people in the month of Safar are walking towards Imam Hussein's shrine, we see that during the actual martyrdom night of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, that there actually might not be anyone there. There is no shrine around his holy grave, no visitors. I want you to compare these two brothers, the visitors of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and the visitors of Imam Hassan. The visitors of Imam Hussein have a table spread from Basra to Musa, that asking and begging people, come and have, you're the zawar of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, please come and have food, please come and have this drink, please stay here. But the zawar of Hassan ibn Ali, when they come to do ziyarat of him, they're confronted with police and officers, telling them, hitting them, saying harsh words to them, accusing them of polytheism. Inshallah, one day we'll be able to build a shrine for Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and that one day we will see just how Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the Zawar, visit him. We'll be able to see his grave in the same way. Everything about Imam Hassan alayhi salam is madloom and oppressed. His life, he was 70 times they tried to assassinate him. They stabbed a dagger, and for months he had to hide. Which leader do you know that had to wear armor in front of his own people, in front of his own military men? And his poison, the way they poisoned him, his wife, the closest person to him, you could say, poisoned him, Ja'da, poisoned him. His funeral was a very oppressed funeral. When they came and circled his body, Imam Hussein alayhi salam came and circled his body around Rasulullah's grave. They came in front of him and says, you cannot take him here. He cannot be here. He is the Imam of the age. And at that time, Imam Hussein alayhi salam was becoming very angry, frustrated. But he remembered, you can say in the history, he remembered the words of his dear brother Hassan to have patience. I don't know what Imam Hussein alayhi salam was going through when he saw those arrows, the 70 arrows that landed on the body of Imam Hassan. They didn't even have mercy on the dead body of Imam Hassan when they struck arrows. But I think that Karbala is a place where you can see Imam Hassan, and the fragrance of Imam Hassan can be smelled. When Qasim and Abdullah come and enter the army of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, it shows you what a great father Imam Hassan was. They are the representatives of Imam Hassan in Karbala. When asked about death, Qasim ibn al-Hassan says it's sweeter than honey. These are examples that Karbala has, instances for everyone of all ages. For the youth, it has shuhada and examples. For the old, it has examples. For men, it has examples. For women. But nothing is like, we could say, when Abdullah ibn al-Hassan, this orphan son of Imam Hassan, comes to the battlefield with sandals. What armor would not fit him because he is too young. Take your minds to Karbala when Abdullah comes. And Lady Zainab is trying to grab him so he does not come into the battle because he's too small, he's too young, he's too fragile, you could say. But Abdullah becomes the shield of Imam Hussein. When they come to strike Imam Hussein and he doesn't have companions, basically no one else is left for him. But Abdullah, the son of Imam Hassan, takes his hand, and the maqtal says becomes the shield of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and they come to strike Imam Hussein, they strike his arm instead. His arm is now dangling by the skin, the maqtal mentions. Imam Hussein alayhi salam rushes to him. He is one of those shuhada that gave life on the chest of Imam Hussein. Two of these I can at least mention that died in the chest of Imam Hussein. One was Ali Asghar, the infant son of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The one, Abdullah, that his chest he is dying on the chest of Imam Hussein. At that time, as if he's saying, uncle, it's okay, they severed my limbs, my arm is severed. They shoot me with arrows, it's okay. As long as I can hear your heart pump, as long as I can hear your heartbeat, I am happy because I know you are alive. I am your shield, dear uncle. Accept me as your shield. Inna lillah, inna ilayhi raji'un. Ya Allah, we ask you, because of the pure blood of Abdullah ibn al-Hassan, protect all of our youth, inshallah. Have mercy, inshallah, on this dear marhum. Give patience to his parents, inshallah. Give all of us patience for this calamity. Give us and answer our du'as that we all have now. Allow us to be of the companions of the Imam of the age. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad ma'atam al-Husayn. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Do we have anyone for Imam Hassan? We'll go over there. Okay. So actually we're going to be going, those that would like to join the Matam, they're going to be doing Matam over there at the main hall. Keep us in your du'as, inshallah. Let's recite Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.